Hey, everybody. Welcome back to episode 86 of the Alfie Whattam Technology Podcast. As always, this episode is, of course, sponsored by WeLoveAlpha.com. If you recruit software engineers and you're looking for your next hire, go to WeLoveAlpha.com to find the best engineers and developers across London and the UK. So today, I'm joined by Mr. Jared Mooring. Jared, could you give us a little bit of an intro, mate? Tell people who you are, what your background is, and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, sure, Alfie. Thanks for inviting me onto the podcast. Yeah, so just a little bit about myself. So I work for a company called GFK, Growth from Knowledge, and we're basically a global leader as it relates to market research solutions. We've been in the game for about 85 years. Can you believe it or not? And so, wow. We within the business have been working on scaling and transforming from a technology perspective. So you can only imagine taking a company that sort of had its roots from the early 90s all the way into building out modern software solutions. And so how I fit into the picture is my role here is head of engineering practice. So I'm really responsible for the 700 or so architects and engineers that we have across our tech and data business. And my responsibility really is to make sure that we're focusing on how we build out our software. Mm-hmm. And building out software is quite complex. And I'm really proud of how we've actually approached this, because having somebody responsible for this, I think really makes a big difference. And obviously everything's got its challenges. But I think the way that we've embraced that and the culture that we've started to create is something that we are hugely proud of. And one of the things that I think is most important is the people side of the business. And I'm hoping that we can really dive into that today, Alfie.
Awesome. And you also have a podcast, don't you, Jared, where you have similar conversations as well. Could you just tell the people listening about that as well?
Yeah, I do. So thanks for letting me plug that. It's called the Bren and Jared Show, and we started off basically as workmates, and I used to work for a private equity firm where I was running their software engineering team, and I moved on from that company and stayed in contact with one of the guys there, and we started talking every week or every couple of weeks, really, just about career things that we were struggling with or challenges, and looking for advice from each other. And it kind of grew into something that was really deep. We came away both really energized from the conversations. And what we thought is that, if we're talking about these things, then maybe other people are talking about them or should be talking about them, because we go into quite a lot of deep topics. And what we're really trying to do is to make a really positive difference in people's lives. And we're definitely not as big as you yet, Alfie. So hopefully we can get some more listeners on board. But for us, it's really about trying to make a positive impact in people's lives by talking about hard things. And that's something that I'm pleased to say that we do quite well. And the response and the feedback so far has been quite positive. So if people have a chance, then yeah, check it out, the Bren and Jared Show.
Awesome. And Spotify, Apple, where do you host it?
We're on all the major channels, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Yeah, we're everywhere.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Jared. I wanted to delve deeper into some of those topics, especially around the people side, because so often I have people on the show and all we talk about is technology, and that's great. It's great to discuss software engineering from a deep down technical perspective, but it's not just about the technical skills and the technical language. It's also about the personality, the people, the culture, and all of that is equally as important as well. So be keen to get your expertise and perspective, both from the point of view of hiring developers and also engineers looking for their either first opportunities or looking to advance and excel in their careers as well. So if we start with your hiring manager hat on, you've got a large team of engineers and architects and so on. Obviously each role is different when you're recruiting, and each individual needs to have different types of skills depending on the role. But what are the common threads, Jared, that you look for when recruiting? Are there any behaviors, any green flags, the opposite of red flags, and anything great that sticks out to you, which makes you think, great, this is a person that we want in our team, which other people listening can then take that advice on board and apply it to their interviews?
So I think one thing that probably separates good from great, because we can get good developers and good engineers coming in, but every business obviously wants great engineers, and I think there's a couple of ways of approaching this. You've got to have something in place to recognize good engineers and turn them into great engineers, and we can dive into some of that a bit later on. One of the things for me that does separate good from great, though, is genuine passion and enthusiasm for the topic, for building out and solving problems. Quite often, and I've done so many interviews, I see people coming in and they're going to be a little bit nervous. So there's an element of that hiring manager having to create a really safe place for somebody to actually just have a chat. I don't like having or using the term interview. I actually just prefer having a chat, having a conversation with somebody, because we're people at the end of the day. We're social creatures. We're meant to be conversing and not feeling as though you're under a microscope or you're being spotlighted or under pressure. So one of the things that I typically work with my hiring managers to try and do is to make sure that we're creating that environment, but then also we're looking for people who just have that passion, because you can teach people the skills needed to create good software. Mm-hmm. It's hard to teach people who don't want to be there, who just see this as being a 9 to 5, a bit of a day job. What we're really looking for are people who just ooze this passion and this excitement. And that's what I've seen in my experience sort of separates that good from great. And typically you can see that people will come into interviews and they'll have done their research on the company. They'll have prepared something. And I've been in interviews actually where somebody said, "Look, can I just show you? Can I just screen share some of my ideas, some of the things that I've been working on?" And they might not have been the most fantastic engineer, but for me, that's what I want. That's what we need more of in the business, because that creates a culture, and it's hard to create culture, isn't it? I mean, people say that they can create culture and whatnot, but you have to have the people there that are capable of building that out. So I think that's probably the one thing that I'm always looking for. It's people that are genuinely passionate about their practice, about their craft. It's about wanting to just excel and do the best they possibly can.
It blows me away. You mentioned about doing research, and obviously if somebody does a lot of research about something and it's something that they're interested in, that will bleed into passion. But it blows me away so many times where candidates will go on an interview and they don't know anything about the company or the hiring manager, or they haven't done any research, and because of that it's pretty hard to to have a passionate conversation. If you're it's hard to be confident, isn't it, when you have not much information in front of you.
It is, but equally, depending on the type of candidate that you're interviewing for as well. Some seniors, I would have an expectation that they'll have done that. Some juniors or some graduates you end up meeting, they're nervous. This might be their first ever interview, and they probably haven't slept the night before because they're so nervous about it. And if you're a good hiring manager, you can pick these things up. A lot of technology for me is about people. It's the biggest, the most difficult problem for us to solve. The technology is the simple piece. It's the people. It's being able to understand and communicate with individuals. And I think being able to create that environment and tease out some of the things that people really want to discuss, and perhaps are just not confident in discussing. That's where you really get the gold from. So I can't put enough emphasis on trying to just treat people like people, as opposed to just a checklist of things that we need to go through and score people sort of 1 to 10. It's much more about having that really engaging conversation and just trying to get the most out of people.
Yeah. I saw something on LinkedIn the other day. I can't remember who posted it, but they said interviews are just conversations, and it applies exactly to what you said a moment ago. Interviews are just discussions. It's just two people or a couple of people speaking with each other. And when you look at it from that perspective, it's not you know, to be as nervous perhaps as you would be. You mentioned culture a second ago, Jared. What is important to you when building culture? And I suppose the second part of this question, after COVID, everybody's working from home. the majority of the time, I would say, in the tech world. Certainly even hybrid companies are more remote now than they are in the office for the most part. And that creates a separate set of challenges and opportunities for building culture. But what advice would you give to people that are looking to build culture within their teams? What's important to you?
I think it's hard to go and build culture. You absolutely need to have the right people in place. And by the right people, I mean, again, people that are genuinely passionate about creating something great. You need to have the support from executives as well, because I think a lot of executives, certainly in my experience, have just said we want this type of a culture, but they don't want to support that culture. They don't want to pay for, put the money behind investing in the culture. So this is for me is very important. It comes from the top down. We need to have the money available for us to get people in to speak and create events. We need to be able to go out and talk at events. That all costs money. So we need absolutely to have that financing and support from behind us. But then also that executive level sponsorship is just so important. That enables the people to actually do it. Again, it's about letting people be creative. Don't constrain people. Some of the most innovative ideas I've seen have come from not having a set of constraints around certain things. I mean, I can think back to some of my days back at Yahoo when we were told, okay, you've got this amount of money. We're going to tell everybody that they've got effectively an entire day to spend socializing and building out their skills and their networks. What are you going to do? How would you solve that particular problem? And we came up with an unconference, and that was a brilliant idea. It was an opportunity for people to, on the day, come up with topics that they wanted to talk about and then go and talk about some of those topics. I mean, that comes all the way from the top down. So I think having that buy-in, that support is really, really important, because if you're trying to do it bottom up, delivery pressures, etc., are always going to get in the way, and so you don't have that avenue and that opportunity. So I think for me, that's one of the key things.
Okay. A lot of the things that we just talked about there are aimed perhaps at tech leaders and engineering managers and that sort of thing. A lot of the people watching the show are very much in that transition phase of moving from a hands-on engineer into a leadership type role. If you think back to perhaps when you made that leap and started managing people and running teams, what advice would you give to people that are looking to make that step up and move into like a leadership type position?
I think the number one advice that I give people is start doing the job. Don't wait to be given the opportunity. Start doing the job. Start finding opportunities where you can get that experience. If you wait for that door to be opened, you'll be waiting a long time. It's hard to progress through an organization. It depends on the size of the organization, but quite often it is quite challenging to progress quickly through that organization. So as soon as you see an opportunity, lean into it and actually start doing some of the things, and then showcase and talk about to your manager, etc., about the things that you're doing. Offer up ideas. These are the types of things that you need to be doing to make yourself stand out. It also makes the conversation easier when it comes to identifying that right talent as well. So instead of it being okay, let's go and interview for the talent, you should be the person that comes top of mind when that vacancy does become available. Create the vacancy. For me, this is again a culture thing. We as leaders need to encourage that type of behavior as well, and we shouldn't feel defensive when we see other people trying to extend themselves. It should all be we should all be working towards the same thing. We're all one big team. Let's sort of facilitate that culture. So my number one piece of advice would be start doing the job, finding those opportunities and start doing it.
I would completely second that. It's in my last role before I launched my company, I went from running a small team of 5 or 6 people to doing a much larger role where I was running a business unit of about 60 people. And I was doing that job for 6 months before I had the the title or the responsibilities, because nobody else was doing it. So I put my hand up and I just started doing it. And obviously there was some pushback, but after doing it for a few months, I was sort of known as that person that does that role. So when they did start to look for somebody, it was a 2-minute search, because they kind of went, look, he's already doing
Exactly.
it. Might as well pay him for it. So yeah, do the job that you want to do, not the job that you're doing. It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, exactly.
What about people that have made that leap and then they want to make the next leap? And it's not about managing engineers or hands-on workers. It's about managing managers and leading leaders. Quite a different position in my experience, and a very different set of challenges it comes with. You talked a moment ago about how some of your hiring managers within your team have, so you are, and 700, you obviously must have a big team full of leaders and layers to that hierarchy. What about the people that start managing managers? What different set of principles and advice would you share with them?
I think the number one thing is to always maintain. You need to maintain that human aspect of things as you go higher up, as you progress further and further up that hierarchy. The more and more distant you get from what's actually happening on the ground.
Yeah.
So the conversation gets diluted down. I'm a big supporter of having skip meetings, and having constant contact with people who are close to the problems. As you get higher up, you're facing off with the business, and there are different challenges. There's political challenges. There's ego that gets involved. There's a lot of that stuff that you need to start working out how you manage. The people aspect of it, you just have to treat people well, and you need to set people in a direction, but not prescribe the steps that get taken to achieve an outcome. Set a direction and let people make their own mistakes. And when they make those mistakes, be okay with that, right? So it's about doing exactly the same as what you've been doing, but on a bigger scale. Don't change anything except maintain that contact. You have to maintain the contact on the ground. Otherwise, you end up working on somebody else's set of priorities. And so that for me is something that I always encourage people to do, is to maintain that contact and just go and take people out for a coffee, organize sessions. As you get higher up, people, you carry a lot of weight and you carry a lot of energy. The more present you are in some of these situations, the better the culture that you end up creating as well. So I think a lot of it is just maintain that human aspect of things. That for me is just absolutely important.
Yeah, I used to have a lot of no agenda meetings with my old team, where we would just grab a 20-minute coffee and I'd ask how they're doing. Immediately they'd start bringing up whatever projects they were working on, and I'd go, no, I don't care about that. How are you doing? You know, what's happening with you? How's your missus? What's happening with life? That to me is one of the most important management tools that you can use to build a team, which stays with you, and retention. I want to talk in a second about advice more specifically for candidates, but just finishing off on the last piece for, I suppose, more leaders. When it comes to retention, when it comes to keeping people within the business, obviously it's a crazy competitive market at the moment. Tech shortages, demand and supply. What tips would you give to people that perhaps are losing people in their team? They're not quite getting the tenure out of individuals that they want. They've got a bit of a rotating door within their organization. What advice would you give to increase retention?
Create opportunities internally. Recruiting for talent is expensive. It's time consuming. It costs a lot of money. Create opportunities internally first. And if you're not creating those opportunities internally, then why not? I'm a big believer in lateral movement, and we tried to create an element or enable quite a lot of mobility within the organization. It's better to have created that culture and to retain that talent through those ways, as opposed to going and looking elsewhere. So create the opportunities elsewhere, and instead of, for example, of a senior engineer leaving, going out into the market and recruiting a senior engineer, look at the talent that's already inside of your organization. And maybe somebody's 6 months away from actually being a senior. Promote them anyway. Put them into the role and support them.
Yeah. People will learn a lot faster by doing it rather than just reading it in a book, right? And then training and training and training, and then eventually doing it. Baptism by fire. Okay, so for the I suppose more junior level candidates watching this, junior developers, people getting into graduates, getting into their first career, what tips would you give when it comes to their CV, their resume? Because you must look at loads of different CVs. You must have in your mind red flags which discount somebody from getting an interview. The CV is a gateway to an interview. The interview is a gateway to the job. But if we strip it back to the CV stage, what should or shouldn't candidates be doing when putting together their CVs?
I think a lot of it comes back down to the passion. I mean, that passion and that personality has to ooze in the CV. That's difficult to do on paper as well. I completely understand that, but you need to be able to show off some of those projects that you've created, whether that's at university, but ideally the side projects. Show that you're contributing back to some open source projects. Contributing to open source projects is hard. My advice is always with start on the documentation side, go and document some things. And because documentation is the thing that always gets left behind. Nobody wants to do that, but it's one of the most valuable pieces. So go and do that. The maintainers of that project are going to be so grateful that somebody's spending time creating documentation. Just go and do that. So again, for me, it's about you might only have some work experience, or you might have only just come out of university, but you need to have that portfolio built up, and the more that you can actually showcase, the better in my opinion. But you also just need to show that you've got a life as well. So have that personality really shine through. But I actually think that junior engineers and graduates are a bit of a disadvantage, because we need to also educate the hiring managers and businesses as well, to put more of an emphasis on taking chances on people. So that's one of the things that we've actually done at GFK. I mean, we are investing quite heavily in a big recruitment program around bringing in graduates and juniors and building out a graduate framework whereby we understand that people come out of university and don't really know what type of aspect of technology they want to get into. And some people come out, they spend 3 years at university thinking they want to be a software engineer, when in fact they want to go and do infrastructure, or they want to go and look at security. And so the risk that we end up having, the risk that we end up running is that we put a square peg into a round hole. So we need to get better. And this is why I'm proud to kind of push the point around what we're doing. It's bringing in graduates, creating them a framework and creating a platform whereby they get exposure to the different aspects of building software and building out products. Get them exposure to actual product managers. Maybe they thought they wanted to go and build software, but they're really creative and they want to go and build the products themselves. So I think that's one of the big aspects, sort of for me.
That's a good piece of advice. I see a lot of people that are in the wrong tech job. They really should be in testing, support, product data, and they just do engineering because that's what the thing is to do. But it's so much more than that, isn't there?
And there's a sunk cost fallacy associated with that as well. They've spent 3 years at university. They spend another 1 or 2 years becoming an engineer, and they think I've kind of done this for so long. It's scary going into doing something a bit different. Why not change it? Enable people to get exposure to these things earlier on, and facilitate and enable that, is my opinion.
What do you wish you did when you were starting out your career differently? I suppose in hindsight's a wonderful thing, right? But is there anything that looking back you would have changed that maybe people listening can make sure they don't repeat the same mistakes?
I made loads of mistakes, but I'm actually pleased I made all of those mistakes. Yeah. I don't think I would have changed anything, because I'm quite happy with sort of how things have panned out. I think if I was to offer any advice, though, it would be to get mentorship and find people that have done this before. I know that there are a number of really good groups, like Meet a Mentor is one of those great groups where you can go on there and you can actually look for a mentor. And there are some fantastic people. I was very lucky that I did get some quite good mentorship, and still do have a number of mentors now. I think it's one of the biggest and easiest like the ROI on that is huge. I mean, we've got a mentorship program internally as well at GFK, which again, that's massive benefit. So my advice would be go and find a mentor, go and find 3 mentors, and focus in on that. And you can always change, but have people that have done it before, because there's going to reach a point in your career where you just don't know what to do next. Some people, that takes them 10, 15 years to reach that point. And they say, well, I don't know where to go. You need to have somebody that you can speak to in confidence that can help you. And if you don't have that, then the problem ends up compounding and getting a lot worse.
You've put me in the best position possible, Jared, to plug our free mentoring program. We have at Alpha. So.
There you go.
Come on, I'll pay you later, mate.
We didn't even collude on that.
No, that was genuinely accident, but it's a perfect way to end the episode as well. So we have a program called Alpha Plus. It's essentially Netflix for the UK software engineering community, where we have free training from engineering leaders from Google, from Amazon, from Microsoft, and the best startups in the country. It's all completely free. New content every single week. You can watch it anywhere, and obviously expert coaching from the top tech leaders in the country. There's no sign up required, and it's currently being used by engineers from the BBC, from Uber, from Cambridge, from Deloitte, SpaceX, and so on. So if you want free access to Alpha Plus, just go to welovealpha.com. Spelling that way, and you can get free access today for junior engineers and even seniors as well that might want to brush up their skills. So thank you for the opportunity there, Jared, to mention that.
You're welcome.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on the show, mate. Been really, really good to speak to you about these things, and I'm sure people got something out of this. I know I certainly did. So thanks for coming on. Everybody should definitely go and check out your podcast if they're interested in more conversations like this. And for those that have watched, if you're not already following, subscribing, etc., check us out on Spotify. Got new episodes coming out every single week with the heads of engineering from some of the best companies across the country. So hopefully this was useful. Thank you very much, Jared, and see you all next time.
Imagine if you were able to hire the next Elon Musk, or if you got a job at Facebook back when it was just a startup. Well, these people and these opportunities, they are still out there, and we have access to them. Access to all of them. At Alpha Technology, we specialise in software development recruitment across London and the UK. From React to Java to C# and more. We represent the best front-end, back-end, and full-stack engineers on the market. This includes top developers from Meta, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, and more. Our clients operate across AI, blockchain, VR, AR, fintech, edtech, health tech, and more. From startups to global enterprises and everything in between. But Alpha isn't just a recruitment agency. We are also a tech community. We host podcasts, run meetup events, and lead ED&I initiatives, supporting women in technology, BAME individuals, and the Tech for Good ecosystem. So, if you're a company looking to hire software engineers, or if you're a developer open to new opportunities yourself, then we are here to help. Alpha Technology. Recruiting for the future.